The year was 2247, and the stars had never seemed so close. Humanity had spent decades building colonies on Mars and mining stations in the asteroid belt. They had dreamed of meeting other intelligent life among the stars. They had imagined peaceful exchanges of knowledge and culture. They had hoped for friendship. Across the void of space, what they got instead was a warship. Admiral Daniel Harper stood on the command bridge of the starship Resolute, the flagship of Earth's small but growing space fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many conflicts on Earth before humanity finally united. Now 63 years old, he had thought his fighting days were behind him. The universe had other plans. "Sir, the alien vessel is entering the atmosphere," reported Lieutenant Katie Morgan from her station. She was young, barely 30, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced speed. "They're heading toward the Atlantic Ocean. No response to any of our communication attempts." Daniel watched the massive ship on his screen. It was shaped like a crescent moon, dark purple in color and nearly 2 kilometers long. Nothing humanity had built came close to its size. His stomach tightened with a feeling he had not experienced in decades. Genuine fear. "Keep trying all frequencies," he ordered. "They have to be listening to something." For 3 days, the alien ship hovered over the ocean while humanity tried desperately to make contact. Governments held emergency meetings. Scientists analyzed every signal the ship emitted. Religious leaders debated what this meant for their faiths. And ordinary people looked up at the sky and wondered if their world was about to change forever. It was. On the 4th day, the aliens finally responded. Every screen on Earth, every phone, every computer display suddenly showed the same image. A reptilian face with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like yellow flames. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, somehow translated by technology humans could not understand. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the creature announced. "I am War Commander Thezek of the Velthari Dominion. Your world has been selected for integration into the Galactic Council's territory. You have 72 hours to surrender all military assets and submit to colonial administration. Resistance will result in extinction. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. Silence fell across the planet. In the hours that followed, humanity learned more about its place in the universe than it had discovered in all its previous history. The Galactic Council was a collection of 47 spacefaring species that controlled a vast section of the galaxy. The Velthari served as their enforcers, conquering new worlds and bringing them under council rule. They had been doing this for 12,000 years. No species had ever successfully resisted them. General Lisa Hartwell addressed the United Earth Defense Council in an underground bunker beneath Geneva. She was a small woman with short black hair and a voice that commanded attention without ever rising above a conversational tone. Before the Unification Wars, she had led the resistance in what used to be called South America. She knew something about fighting impossible odds. "They expect us to give up," she said, looking at the gathered leaders of humanity. Every other species they encountered did exactly that. They saw the big ships and the advanced weapons, and they decided survival was more important than freedom. The Velthari have never met a species that chose differently. The president of Earth, a former teacher named Marcus Webb, leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, General?" Lisa smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I'm suggesting we teach them something new." The plan came together in 48 hours. While diplomats pretended to negotiate surrender terms, military forces around the world prepared for battle. Scientists worked without sleep to analyze the alien ship's energy signatures. Engineers modified weapons that had been designed to fight other humans, adapting them for a very different enemy. Dr. Kevin Marsh was a physicist who had spent his career studying theoretical energy systems. He was short, overweight, and had not left his laboratory in 3 days. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he did not notice. On his screen was the answer humanity desperately needed. Their shields operate on a specific frequency. He explained to General Hartwell through a video call, his words tumbling out in excitement. If we can match that frequency with a concentrated electromagnetic pulse, we can create a temporary gap. Maybe 3 seconds, but that should be enough. Enough for what? Lisa asked. Kevin pushed his glasses up his nose. Enough to hit them with everything we have. The 72 hours passed. War Commander Desek waited for humanity's surrender. He had done this hundreds of times before. The primitives always surrendered. They always begged for mercy. They always accepted their place in the natural order of the galaxy. Instead, he received a message from Admiral Harper. This is the United Earth Defense Force. Your demand for surrender has been rejected. Leave our solar system immediately, or we will remove you by force. Desek actually laughed. The sound was harsh and cold, like rocks grinding together. He ordered his weapons officer to fire a warning shot, destroying an uninhabited island to demonstrate Velthury power. The island vanished in a flash of light. Desek waited for the humans to reconsider. 6 hours later, the Resolute led a fleet of 37 human ships toward the alien vessel. They were smaller, weaker, and their technology was centuries behind. But they carried Dr. Marsh's device, and they carried something the Velthury had forgotten existed. The desperate courage of people fighting for their home. The battle lasted 11 minutes. The electromagnetic pulse worked exactly as Kevin had predicted, creating a brief gap in the alien shields. Human missiles, armed with nuclear warheads, poured through that gap. The Velthury ship, designed to intimidate and overwhelm rather than actually fight, had no internal defenses against such an attack. Explosions ripped through its hull. Systems failed across the vessel. War Commander Desek barely had time to send a distress signal before his ship crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. On the bridge of the Resolute, Katie Morgan stared at her screen in disbelief. "They're down," she whispered. "They're actually down." Admiral Harper said nothing. He knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would send more ships, more warriors, more weapons. But humanity had proven something important today. They could be hurt. They could be beaten, and Earth would not surrender. Across the planet, people celebrated in the streets, not understanding the war that had just begun. General Hartwell watched the footage of the fallen alien ship and began planning for the next battle. She knew they were coming. She knew they would be angry. Let them come, she thought. We will be ready. Far away, in the chambers of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Zorvax received the report of the Velthury defeat. He read it twice, certain there must be some mistake. Then he dismissed it entirely. A malfunction, he announced to the assembled representatives. Nothing more. Send a proper fleet. These humans will learn their place. He could not have been more wrong. 6 months passed after the first alien ship fell into the Atlantic Ocean. Humanity used every single day to prepare. Factories that once built cars now produced warships. Universities became research centers for alien technology. Young men and women lined up at recruitment stations, eager to defend their world against the darkness that waited among the stars. Captain Ryan Cole stood in the command center of Fortress Mars, a massive defense station orbiting the red planet. He was 38 years old, with dark skin and a shaved head. He had joined the space program as an engineer, but had risen quickly through the ranks after showing an unusual talent for tactical thinking. Now he commanded humanity's first line of defense. 15 contacts emerging from hyperspace, reported Lieutenant Megan Shaw. She was a slim woman with blonde hair and nervous hands that never stopped moving across her console. Valthyre's signatures confirmed. They brought a battle group this time. Ryan studied the tactical display. 15 warships, each one larger than the vessel that attacked Earth. They moved in a precise formation, spreading out to surround the inner solar system. The Valthyre were not making the same mistake twice, or so they thought. "Send word to Admiral Harper," Ryan ordered. "Tell him the guests have arrived." The defense plan had been developed by General Hartwell and her team over months of careful study. They had examined every piece of data from the first battle, every scrap of information about how the Valthyre fought. What they discovered changed everything. The Galactic Council species had not faced a real military challenge in thousands of years. Their technology was advanced, but it had not improved in centuries. Why change something that worked? Every world they conquered had surrendered quickly, so they never needed to adapt their tactics. Their shields operated on the same frequencies. Their weapons fired in the same patterns. Their ships moved in the same formations. They had become predictable. Dr. Kevin Marsh had spent the last 6 months studying captured Valthyre technology. He looked even more tired than before, surviving on coffee and determination. But his eyes were bright with excitement when he presented his latest discovery to the Defense Council. "Their reactors use crystalline structures to contain energy," he explained, pointing to diagrams on a large screen. "These crystals vibrate at a specific resonance. If we can match that resonance and amplify it, the crystals will shatter. The reactors will overload. The ships will explode from the inside." General Hartwell nodded slowly. "How many ships can we equip with this weapon?" "If we work around the clock, maybe 12. Then we work around the clock." The Valthyre fleet approached Earth with absolute confidence. Their commander, Admiral Vorath, was a veteran of 30 successful conquests. He had studied the report of Vesek's defeat and concluded that the humans had simply gotten lucky. One primitive species could not defeat the might of the Galactic Council twice. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The battle began in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Human ships, smaller and faster than the Valthyre vessels, darted between the rocks like fish in a coral reef. They struck quickly, hitting the alien ships from unexpected angles, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. Admiral Harper commanded the fleet from the bridge of the Resolute. Katie Morgan, now promoted to full commander, served as his tactical officer. Together, they coordinated attacks that seemed random but were actually carefully planned to maximize confusion and damage. "They're trying to maintain formation," Katie observed. "Every time we break them apart, they spend precious minutes regrouping. Then, we keep breaking them apart," Daniel replied. "Don't give them time to think." On Fortress Mars, Ryan Cole watched for the right moment. His station carried 3 of Dr. Marsh's resonance weapons, but they needed to be close to work. Too close. He would have to fly directly into the enemy formation. "All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers," he announced over the station's communication system. "This is going to get rough." The battle raged for 9 days. Human forces used tactics that the Valthyre had never encountered. Ambushes, feints, strategic retreats designed to lead the enemy into traps. They fought from asteroids, from moons, from anywhere that provided cover. They refused to engage in the direct confrontations the aliens expected. Admiral Vorath grew increasingly frustrated. His superior firepower meant nothing if he could not bring it to bear on an enemy that refused to stand still. His communications with the Galactic Council revealed their growing impatience. He was expected to crush these primitives quickly. Every day that passed was an embarrassment to the entire council. On the 7th day, Ryan Cole made his move. Fortress Mars, disguised as a damaged freighter, drifted toward the center of the Valthyre formation. The aliens ignored it, focused on the human warships attacking their flanks. They did not realize the danger until it was too late. Megan Shaw's hands trembled as she activated the resonance weapons. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate and devastating. 3 Valkyrie cruisers in the center of the formation suddenly exploded, their reactors overloading exactly as Kevin Marsh had predicted. The blast damaged 2 more ships nearby. Chaos erupted throughout the alien fleet. Admiral Harper seized the moment. All ships, full attack. Hit them with everything. The final 2 days of the battle were a slaughter. Without their formation, without their coordination, the Valkyrie ships were picked apart one by one. Admiral Varth's flagship was the last to fall, struck by a concentrated missile barrage from 6 human destroyers. When the last alien ship fled toward the outer system, Admiral Harper's message was broadcast on all frequencies throughout the solar system. Earth is not for conquest. Spread the word. On Earth, the celebration was enormous. People danced in the streets, tears streaming down their faces. They had faced extinction and survived. Against all odds, they had won. But General Hartwell did not celebrate. She sat in her office, studying reports and planning for what came next. She knew the Council would not stop. They could not stop. If one primitive species defeated them, others might try. The entire structure of their empire depended on the belief that resistance was impossible. They would come again, she knew, with more ships, more weapons, more determination. And humanity would have to be ready. Far away, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. High Arbiter Zorvax watched the footage of the battle with growing horror. 15 warships destroyed by a species that had barely invented space travel. It should have been impossible. Ambassador Therix of the Kelmari, a species known for their wisdom, spoke carefully. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans fight with a ferocity we have not seen in millennia. Diplomacy might serve us better than force. Zorvax turned on him with fury in his ancient eyes. Diplomacy? With primitives? Never. They have simply been lucky. We will send a fleet so large that luck cannot save them. They will learn their place, or they will die. There is no third option. The Council voted to assemble the largest military force in 3 centuries. 200 ships from 6 different species would converge on Earth and crush human resistance forever. None of them understood what they were truly facing. Humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far more dangerous to the Council's power. They were fighting for an idea. The idea that freedom was worth any sacrifice. That courage could overcome any odds. That the small could defeat the mighty if they refused to give up. That idea would change the galaxy forever. The Third Fleet arrived 18 months after the second defeat. 200 warships darkened the sky above Neptune, their massive forms blocking out the distant stars. They carried warriors from 6 different Council species, united by a single purpose: the complete destruction of human resistance. Commander Beth Sullivan stood in the cockpit of her fighter, watching the enemy fleet on her tactical display. She was 41 years old, with short brown hair and a scar across her left cheek from a training accident years ago. She led the Ghost Wing, an experimental squadron equipped with stealth technology that could make their ships invisible to alien sensors. "That's a lot of ships," muttered her wingman, Lieutenant Jake Torres. He was young, barely 25, but he had proven himself in the previous battles. His hands were steady on the controls despite the fear in his voice. Beth smiled grimly. "Good thing we don't plan to fight fair." The battle plan was General Hartwell's masterpiece. She had spent months studying Council military doctrine, learning their patterns and weaknesses. She knew they would expect humanity to defend Earth directly, meeting their fleet in open combat. So she planned to do the opposite. "They're confident because they have numbers," she had explained to her commanders. but numbers only matter if you can use them. We're going to make sure they can't. The Ghost Wing's mission was simple, but incredibly dangerous. While the main human fleet engaged the enemy from the front, Beth and her pilots would slip behind their formation and target the command ships. Without coordination, the massive alien fleet would fall into chaos. Admiral Harper led the diversionary attack from the bridge of the Resolute. His fleet had grown since the first battle, now numbering nearly 100 ships. Still outnumbered 2-1. They had advantages the Council could not match: speed, adaptability, and the burning determination of people fighting for their home. All ships, begin attack run, Daniel ordered. Make them focus on us. The battle erupted across the solar system. Human ships struck like wasps, stinging the massive alien vessels and retreating before they could respond. Missile barrages targeted weapon systems and engines, crippling ships without destroying them. The goal was not to win through firepower, but to create confusion and buy time. On Earth, Sergeant Tony Reeves watched the battle unfold from the intelligence center beneath Geneva. He was a muscular man in his 30s, with a thick beard and calm eyes that had seen too much combat. His job was not to fight in space, but to wage a different kind of war entirely. "Transmission ready," reported his technician, a young woman named Sarah Hayes. She worked quickly, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "We can broadcast to every Council-controlled world within 3 sectors." Tony nodded. "Send it." For months, human intelligence had been studying the Council's subject species. They discovered something the rulers had tried to hide. Not everyone accepted Council rule willingly. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds lived under occupation, their freedoms taken, their cultures suppressed. They had given up hope of resistance long ago. Tony's broadcast was designed to change that. It showed footage of the first Valkyrie ship falling to Earth, of the Second Fleet's defeat, of humans standing defiant against impossible odds. And it carried a simple message: you are not alone. Resistance is possible. We are proof. In the depths of space, Beth Sullivan led her squadron through the gaps in the enemy formation. Their stealth systems worked perfectly, hiding them from sensors that had never been designed to detect such technology. She could see the command ships ahead, massive vessels bristling with weapons and surrounded by escorts. "Ghostwing, select your targets," she ordered quietly. On my mark, we hit them hard and fast. The attack was devastating. 7 command ships exploded in the first 30 seconds, their admirals killed before they could even give orders. The Council fleet, suddenly without leadership, began to fall apart. Ships that had been advancing in perfect formation started crashing into each other. Weapons that should have been firing at humans turned on nearby allies by mistake. Admiral Harper pressed the advantage immediately. "All ships, maximum attack. Break them apart." The battle lasted 3 weeks. What should have been a quick victory for the Council became a grinding defeat. Human forces destroyed or captured over 100 enemy ships. The survivors fled in disgrace, leaving behind equipment and prisoners that would provide invaluable intelligence. But humanity's greatest victory did not happen in space on Kalmari Prime, a world conquered by the Council 3,000 years ago. Tony Reeves' broadcast had found an audience. The Kalmari were a gentle species, known for their philosophy and art. They had submitted to Council rule rather than see their civilization destroyed. For millennia, they had accepted their fate, until now. Elder Sophis was old even by Kalmari standards, his blue skin wrinkled and his large eyes clouded with age. He had never known freedom, but his grandmother had told him stories of the time before the conquest. Stories of a proud people who answered to no one. He watched the footage of burning Valkyrie ships and wept. "They actually hurt them," he whispered to the young Kalmari gathered around him. "These humans, these primitives as the Council calls them, they hurt our masters. A young female named Terrell stepped forward. Her eyes were bright with something that had been absent from her people for generations: hope. "What do we do, Elder?" Scifistories straightened his ancient body. "We remember who we used to be. We remember that we were conquered, not born to serve. And we prepare for the day when we can fight beside our new friends." Across the Council's territory, similar scenes played out. Species that had accepted their subjugation began to question it. Underground movements that had been dormant for centuries started to stir. The Council's greatest fear was coming true. The humans were not just winning battles. They were inspiring rebellion. High Arbiter Zorvax received the news of the third defeat in stunned silence. His scales had gone pale, his usual arrogance replaced by something very close to fear. 200 ships. 6 species working together. The largest military force in 3 centuries. And the humans had crushed it. "This is impossible," he muttered. "How are they adapting so quickly? How are they improving so fast?" Councillor Drevik of the Synthery, an insectoid species known for their analytical minds, studied the battle data carefully. "They learn from every engagement," he said slowly. "They analyze our tactics and develop countermeasures within days. Their technology improves with each battle. They are evolving. Then we must destroy them before they evolve further," Zorvax declared. "Activate the reserve fleets. Call upon every species that owes us loyalty. We will bury them in ships until nothing remains." But even as he gave the order, Zorvax felt something he had not experienced in centuries of rule: doubt. The humans were different from any species the Council had faced. They did not surrender when outmatched. They did not break when pressed. They fought harder, grew stronger, and somehow found hope in the darkest moments. What if, he wondered for the first time, they could not be beaten? He pushed the thought away. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. One primitive species could not change that dot. He was wrong. And deep down, he was beginning to know it. 2 years after first contact, humanity stopped defending and started attacking. The fleet that emerged from hyperspace above Cassix Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human engineers had not simply copied the alien technology they captured. They had studied it, understood it, and then improved it beyond anything the Council thought possible. Their ships were sleeker, faster, and carried weapons that made Velthari admirals question everything they knew about warfare. Fleet Admiral Chris Bennett stood on the bridge of the Carrier Defiance. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had made peace with whatever fate awaited him. He had commanded the defense of Mars during the Second Invasion and had lost many friends in that battle. Now he was bringing the war to the enemy's doorstep. "All ships report ready." "Admiral," said his executive officer, Commander Diana Lopez. She was younger than him, with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her family had been killed when the Velthari destroyed that Pacific island during first contact. She had spent every day since then preparing for this moment. "Then let's remind them what happens when you attack Earth," Chris replied. "Launch all squadrons." Cassix Prime was a Velthari colony world, home to 3 million aliens who had never known anything but Council rule. The defense fleet stationed there was small, just 15 ships, because the Council had never imagined anyone would dare attack their territory. They were wrong. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. Human fighters swarmed the Velthari ships, overwhelming their defenses with speed and numbers. The Carrier Defiance hung back, directing the assault like a conductor leading an orchestra. By the time the planet's surface defenses realized what was happening, it was already over. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of bombarding the planet, the human fleet simply stopped. Ambassador Lara Chun stepped forward on the bridge, ready to deliver humanity's message. She was a former diplomat who had spent her career negotiating peace treaties on Earth. Now she faced a very different challenge. At 45, she had silver streaks in her black hair and a voice that could somehow be both gentle and commanding. The Valkyrie governor appeared on the main screen. He was trembling, his red scales pale with fear. He had expected destruction. He had prepared himself for death. He did not understand why it had not come. "We're not here to conquer," Laura said, her words translated into perfect Valkyrie by the ship's computers. "We're here to liberate. Every species your council has subjugated deserves the chance to choose their own future. We offer friendship, not domination. The choice is yours." The governor stared at her in complete confusion. In 12,000 years of galactic history, no conquering force had ever offered such terms. It had to be a trick. It had to be, but it was not. Over the following weeks, human forces secured Kessex Prime without destroying a single building or killing a single civilian. They set up hospitals to treat the wounded from the space battle. They shared technology freely with anyone who wanted to learn. Teachers arrived to explain democracy and freedom to beings who had never known such concepts existed. Dr. Amy Patterson led the scientific delegation. She was a xenobiologist who had devoted her life to understanding alien life forms. Now she had the opportunity to study them up close, not as specimens, but as friends. Her team worked alongside Valkyrie scientists, sharing knowledge in both directions. "Your medicine's remarkable," she told her counterpart, a Valkyrie doctor named Sarek. "This enzyme treatment could cure diseases we've struggled with for centuries." Sarek looked at her with suspicion that slowly transformed into wonder. "You truly wish to learn from us?" "The council told us humans were savage primitives who would destroy everything they touched." Amy smiled. "The council lies a lot, it turns out." News of Kessex Prime spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The council tried to suppress the information, but they could not stop the whispers. Humans had attacked a Valkyrie world, and instead of death, they brought freedom. Instead of destruction, they brought hope. On Kalmari Prime, Elder Sophis received a secret message from the human fleet. They were coming, not to conquer, but to help. He gathered his people and told them to prepare. After 3,000 years, liberation was finally within reach. High Arbiter Zorvax convened an emergency council session when he learned of humanity's new strategy. His scales were nearly white now, drained of color by the stress of recent months. The war that should have been over in days had become a nightmare that threatened everything he had built. "They're arming the slave species," hissed Councilor Drevik. "Every world they touch becomes a potential enemy. If this continues, the entire structure of galactic civilization will collapse. Then we must stop them," Zorvax replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "How do you stop an enemy that gives rather than takes? How do you fight a force that turns your own subjects against you with kindness?" The tide of the war shifted rapidly. Human fleets liberated world after world, always with the same approach: defeat the military forces, then offer friendship instead of subjugation. Some species were suspicious at first, unable to believe that anyone would help them without demanding something in return. But as months passed and humans kept their promises, trust began to grow. The Kalmari became humanity's strongest allies. Their philosophical traditions gave them insight into galactic politics that humans lacked, while human determination inspired them to fight for their freedom. Together, they began planning the liberation of other conquered worlds. Dr. Amy Patterson made a discovery on Kalmari Prime that changed everything. Buried beneath the ancient cities, hidden from council observers for millennia, were archives containing the true history of the galaxy. The council had suppressed this knowledge, rewriting the past to serve their power. There were others, Amy reported to Fleet Admiral Bennett through an encrypted channel. Other species who resisted the council. Some of them were quite successful for centuries, but the council erased them from history, made everyone forget they ever existed. Chris absorbed this information grimly. So we're not the first to challenge them. No, but we might be the first to win. And if we don't, they'll erase us too. Make the galaxy forget humans ever existed. The Admiral straightened in his command chair. Then, we better make sure we win. The war entered a new phase. It was no longer just about defending Earth, or even defeating the Council's fleets. It was about building something new, something better. A galaxy where species work together as equals instead of masters and slaves. Where freedom was not just a human value, but a universal right. Ambassador Lara Chun began meeting with representatives of liberated worlds, forming the foundation of what would become the Free Worlds Alliance. It started with just 3 species, but as word spread, others asked to join. Within a year, 12 civilizations had declared independence from Council control. The Galactic Council watched their empire crumble and did not understand why. They had more ships, more weapons, more resources than humanity could ever match. But they had forgotten something important over their millennia of dominance. They had forgotten that power built on fear is fragile. And they had forgotten that beings who fight for freedom will always defeat those who fight for control. The humans remembered. They had never forgotten. And now they were teaching the rest of the galaxy. 5 years had passed since the Veltari first demanded Earth's surrender. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Free Worlds Alliance now included 23 species spread across 4 sectors of space. Former slaves had become citizens. Former subjects had become partners. And at the center of this transformation stood humanity. Not as conquerors, but as liberators who asked nothing in return except friendship. High Arbiter Zorvax stood, alone in his private chambers on the Council's capital station. His scales had turned gray with age and stress. The face that had once commanded fear across the galaxy now showed only exhaustion and desperation. He had ruled the Council for 800 years. He had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds. And now he was watching everything he had built fall apart. There is one option remaining, said his advisor, a shadowy figure named Varath, who had served the Council since before Zorvax was born. The Silence Protocol. Zorvax closed his eyes. The Silence Protocol was ancient, created during the Council's early expansion as a weapon of last resort. It could sterilize entire star systems, burning away all life on planets deemed uncontrollable. It had not been used in 8,000 years. Its very existence was known only to the highest Council leaders. If we cannot have these worlds, no one will, Zorvax said slowly. Is that truly what we have become? Varath showed no emotion. It is what we have always been, High Arbiter. We simply never needed to show it before. Zorvax made his decision. He could not let the humans win. He could not allow the Council's power to be broken by primitives who had barely left their homeworld. Better to destroy than to surrender. Better to burn than to bow. He activated the Silence Protocol. Commander Greg Palmer led the Special Operations Team assigned to the most dangerous mission in human history. He was 35 years old, built like a soldier, with close-cropped hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. His team consisted of 20 of humanity's finest warriors, trained for exactly this kind of impossible operation. The Council's Central Command Station is the most heavily defended structure in the galaxy, their briefing officer had explained. But we've found a weakness, a maintenance shaft that connects to the lower levels. If you can get inside, you can reach the control room. Greg had studied the plans for weeks. The shaft was barely large enough for a human to squeeze through. The guards they would face were twice their size. The security systems were designed to detect anything alive that moved through the corridors. He smiled. Sounds like fun. The approach took 3 days. Greg's team used a captured council shuttle to get close to the station, then transferred to small pods that drifted toward the hull like debris. They cut through the outer shell and entered the maintenance shaft in complete silence. Crawling through darkness toward their target, Dr. Sam Crawford had provided them with a secret weapon. He was a young genius who had spent the war developing countermeasures for Council technology. His latest invention was a virus that could disable their security systems from the inside. But it needed to be uploaded directly to the central computer. Once you plug this in, Sam had explained, holding up a device no larger than his thumb, you'll have about 15 minutes before they realize what's happening. Make them count. Greg's team emerged from the shaft into a corridor filled with Valkyrie guards. The fight was brutal and brief. Human soldiers moved with a speed and precision that the aliens could not match, using weapons designed to exploit every weakness in their armor. Within minutes, the corridor was clear. Move, Greg ordered. Clock is ticking. They fought through level after level, losing soldiers along the way, but never slowing down. By the time they reached the control room, only 8 of the original 20 remained. But they were enough. High Arbiter Zorvax looked up as the door exploded inward. He was surrounded by his personal guards, the finest warriors the Valkyrie had ever produced. He felt confident despite the human intrusion. These primitives could not stop him. The silence protocol was already initiated. In less than an hour, it would fire. You're too late, he announced as Greg and his team entered the room. Your precious Earth and all your new friends will burn. There is nothing you can do to stop it. Greg's smile did not waver. Actually, we stopped it 3 days ago. Dr. Crawford cracked your encryption before we even launched this mission. We just needed you to reveal where the control station was located. And you did, when you activated the protocol. Zorvax's face went pale. That's impossible. The encryption is unbreakable. Nothing is unbreakable, Greg replied. That's sort of our thing. The arrest of the High Arbiter was broadcast across the galaxy. Trillions of beings watched as the leader who had ruled them for centuries was led away in restraints by creatures he had once dismissed as primitives. The symbol of council power had fallen. The galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, the remaining council leaders surrendered or fled. Some tried to rally their forces, but their own subjects turned against them. The lies they had told for millennia unraveled as the truth finally emerged. Species that had been taught to hate each other discovered they had been manipulated. Worlds that had competed for council favor realized they had all been victims of the same system. Ambassador Lavra. Chem addressed the newly formed Galactic Assembly in a great hall that had once been reserved for council members only. Now it held representatives from every species, regardless of their technological level or historical status. Democracy had come to the stars. We came to the stars expecting wonder, Lavra said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Instead, we found an empire built on fear and lies. Humanity could have conquered in turn. We could have replaced one tyranny with another. Instead, we chose something harder. We chose to build something better. She looked around at the gathered representatives, beings of every shape and size and color. Some had tentacles. Some had wings. Some had no physical form at all. All of them were equal now. This assembly represents a new beginning, not just for us, but for every species that will ever reach the stars. We will make mistakes. We will face challenges we cannot imagine. But we will face them together as partners instead of masters and slaves. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not conquest. Not domination. Hope. The chamber erupted in applause that seemed to shake the walls themselves. On Earth, Admiral Daniel Harper watched the broadcast from his retirement home in Colorado. Katie Morgan sat beside him, her own hair now showing streaks of gray. They had both grown old in the years of war, but they had lived to see this moment. "Think it will last?" Katie asked, echoing a question she had posed many times before. Daniel considered his answer carefully. Outside the window, children played in a garden that had once been a military bunker. The stars were coming out, no longer symbols of danger but of possibility. "Nothing lasts forever," he said finally. "But we've given them a chance. What they do with it is up to them. That's all anyone can really do. Give the next generation a chance to do better." Katie nodded slowly. "Then I guess we did all right." Across the galaxy, beings of every kind looked up at unfamiliar stars and felt something that had been absent for millennia: hope. The old order was gone. A new era had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a small blue planet called Earth continued to spin, its people looking outward with wonder and determination. Humanity had not merely survived first contact. They had transformed the galaxy. And this was only the beginning.